Welcome to the Balancing Ambitions podcast. I'm your host, Kim Menapace. You are not alone in your pursuit to balance family life, work, side hustles, and taking care of yourself. Balance is not easy to achieve by any means, but we can all work to get better at it together by sharing our stories, tips, and wisdom. Let's dive into this week's episode. Welcome to this week's episode of the Balancing Ambitions podcast. I am super excited to have Ashley Freeman as my guest today. Ashley is a Southern powerhouse with a big heart, bold vision, and zero chill when it comes to helping people build freedom through short-term rentals. A single mom turned seven-figure STR queen, she went from managing one little rental to running over 100 properties. And yes, she still makes time for raising a teen, wrangling animals on her hobby farm, and dreaming up her next big move. Spoiler alert, it may involve a beach house or a mission trip to Africa. She's the founder of Velvet Ditch Villas, the most vibey boutique rental brand in Oxford, Mississippi, and she's obsessed with showing others how to turn real estate into real freedom with a little grit, a lot of faith, and maybe a mimosa or two along the way. If you like real talk, big dreams, and a side of sass with your strategy, you're going to love this episode. Ashley, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Kim. You know how much I love being here. I've missed your face, so I'm super pumped and honored to be on your show. Thanks for having me.
I know we don't get to see each other as frequently, but it was so nice to. These are a great reason to reconnect with people. I love doing the podcast for that reason as well. People that I've known for 25 years and then people I've known for two. And just get it when you fall out of that pattern of hanging out and talking to each other and catching up, it's just a nice excuse to reconnect.
It totally is. And especially last year, I think we saw each other so often. And so now I'm having withdrawals from all my friends from, the mastermind classes. So the podcast is, you're right, it's a great way to catch up again. So thank you.
Thank you for joining us. So let's walk through what you're doing today for your profession. And then we'll also backtrack because I know a little bit about your history and professional tennis. So we'll get into that. Saw that not in your bio yet. I know that. And that's a fun thing to venture into and understand and explore a bit more about you. So, yeah, how did you get to managing over 100 properties today?
Well, so I started in short term rentals accidentally, which, I think a lot of people kind of find themselves in this place. I went through a major life change in 2014. I went through a divorce and we had just purchased this home on several acres, and my daughter was 4 at the time. And I thought, I don't want to uproot her and move her again. So I'm just going to stay put. I was teaching tennis at the time and I could not make ends meet. And so I thought, well, short term rental is booming. It's starting to really come along and hit the scene here. And so I'll try. We live in a college town. University of Mississippi is located in Oxford, Mississippi. And I thought, I'm just going to give this a shot. I'll give short term rental a shot and see what happens. The first year, just through football season, which is, the main season here, we cleared close to 25,000. And so that was in a matter of 6 months. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is, the answered prayer that I needed to make ends meet, to help supplement my income while I was teaching tennis. But after that, I thought, well, I've got to come up with a retirement plan because I don't want to stay on the tennis courts forever. And I brainstormed with my brother, who's a major mentor of mine and into real estate as well. And he said, this is doing so well, your house here. Let's take what little investment money you have and build something. And so I built a cottage on the side of my farmhouse, and the cottage is this cute little quaint place, and we launched that right before COVID. And so I had a freak out moment. I was like, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do? The world shut down, but the cottage did not, because people came and retreated there. Slowly but surely, I thought, well, the cottage just was a unicorn. I mean, it made unbelievable amounts of money within the first year. And I thought, okay, this is doing so well. Let's give it another go and pick up another arbitrage rental. So I leased a place from a friend of ours that is on the square here, which is like the main little hub. Great location here in Oxford, Mississippi, and furnished it. And that was my third unit. Picked up a fourth arbitrage unit, and I just started putting everything on social media. And people started calling, like, "Hey, we have a short-term rental, manage ours." And I remember getting the first call. I was at the gym with my brother, and I was like, "Someone just called me to manage their place. Like, what should I say?" He said, "Ask them for 25% and do it." And I was like, okay, so I did. And then I went from having 4 units of my own to managing 38 the first year, all on my own. And now we have a team of over 20, and we're managing currently around 105 places. So it's gone really quickly in the last 3 years. And had I known what I was getting into, I think I probably would have been too scared to get into it. Just there's a lot of moving parts. And it is it's like days of our lives, you just never know what you're going to get, which is the beauty of short term rental. But yeah, so that's how I ended up here, just a fluke. But I'm so grateful that I did.
Amazing. I don't think I knew the stepping stones to getting where you are now. And going back to that first unit, did you do a shared space or was it a fully its own entire unit? Walk me through that.
So my farmhouse was the first space. It's a 5 bedroom house on the 3 acres. We just rented out the entire place. That was the first season, first 6 months. And then the cottage came along in 2017. So we rented both spaces out. They're completely separate. So private spaces, private driveways for both, but still on the farm. And so, yes, so those were, the entire spaces were rented out. The arbitrage units are condos. And so those spaces were rented out as well. So no shared spaces, but the entire places were rented out.
Got it. And is your primary home on the same plot of land or just nearby?
Yes, the primary. So the farmhouse is the house that I rented out first on Airbnb. That's where I still currently live. I do not rent it out anymore. It's just too much of a headache to try to get in and out. And I do enjoy like staying put and not having the stress of, oh my gosh, get the cleaners in here, get Lucy moved out, let's move out on Thursday. But, I took at least a $30,000 hit by not moving out, every weekend for these big weekends, but it's okay. It's like the stress, of not having to panic to get out of your house on a Thursday afternoon is it's worth it, to have the peace of mind of like, oh, we don't have to move out, we don't have to pack bags, where are we going to go? So yeah, I don't rent the big house out anymore.
I feel for you because I'm picturing newly single mom you doing this to make it work back when your daughter is 4. You wanted to hold on to this property with all your might, and it is a scramble getting yourself out for Thursday, living somewhere else, getting it clean, and living with that inconvenience and that short-term pain for that long-term gain.
Yeah.
And I think some people I've heard of doing that when the stakes were a lot lower. Like Tatiana Tate up in Canada, she runs the Level Up Your Listing Summit conference out in Arizona. She talked about how she rented out her apartment when she went to go travel and it went really well. And then she kept traveling and traveling. And I think she was single at the time. So it's not foreign. People have done it, but to do it when you have a kid, it's your primary house. What a great moment of power, and
Yeah.
I just have a lot of admiration for you for doing
Thank
that.
you.
And it is hard when you take a unit of yours offline that was making money like we did with our house on Cape Cod. We're not renting it a lot and we love that income, but the convenience, the memories, the personal usage of that house just supersedes the value of that money to us at this time. But it wasn't always that way. We had to rent it out a lot the first
Right.
several years.
Yeah. I mean, Kim, you know, Lucy was 4 at the time, like I mentioned, but when I went through the divorce, I was still teaching professionally on the tennis courts, but I was teaching little kids, which was my bread and butter and just the most awesome job ever, just rainbows and butterflies. But I didn't hit the courts until 3, and I did not get off the courts until, depending on private lessons for the day, like between 7 and 8 p.m. So that put Lucy with someone else, and it put me coming home late. Meanwhile, I had to pick up a job at a local school as a PE teacher, and I worked there from 7 to 3. Then I hit the tennis courts from 3 to 8. Then I went home and prepared the Airbnb. So there are nights that I spent until 4 a.m., mornings until 4 a.m., just trying to get it all done. And remember, like, just crying my eyes out and being so exhausted and thinking, this can't be it. This can't last forever because I am exhausted. And but it just taught me so much, and the resilience that I found and the power that I found through being able to not push myself in a way that was, pleasant. It was not pleasant, but I did what I had to do to make ends meet. And I can see why the Lord put me in those situations to grow and strengthen me for, to have this position now, to lead others, to, be able to host in this space and know how to do it properly and know how to do it the right way. So I know 1000% that that was why the Lord put me in such a place as that, at that time, even though it was not fun, not fun at all, but so worth it now. So worth it.
There are so many moments of people I've met in this industry that had their back against the wall in some way, shape, or form. And I think that instead of asking you the cheesy question, what advice would you give your younger self now? I'd love to ask you how, if you could summarize the step by step process of how you got out of that position to get to where you are today. Because I think that people can vividly remember those positions from several years ago, like they were yesterday, and then are in such a better place today. But sometimes we have trouble piecing together, wait, how did they do it? What did they do first, second, third? Because I'm struggling and I have no hope. So, what could you walk us through that?
I think at the time, it's so hard and you think you're never going to crawl out of this pit. When is this going to end? How long do I have to work this hard? Because it's exhausting and the weight of the world is on your shoulders. Um, and I just kept remembering what my mom used to say, like, breathe and pray through all the hardest moments, and I would. And it didn't necessarily make it easier at the time, but I just constantly repeated to myself, like, I know the Lord is working everything out for me for a purpose, and that purpose is going to be so much grander than I could ever imagine. And that's every day, like, one step in front of the other. And that's just what I've told myself. He's working it out. He's working it out. My dreams are going to be grander than I ever imagined. And I'm honored that he put me in this situation. I'm honored that I get to lead a team of 20 something women who are also, you know, found themselves in my situation as well and feeling broken and helpless and unworthy of, a life greater than they could desire. And so I get to work with these awesome women and empower them and inspire them now. And so that little saying of, one foot in front of the other, breathe and pray through the storms, and just know that every situation, good, bad, and ugly, the Lord is truly working everything out for your greater good.
Man, and it makes me pause for a second as I take that in. That's just so beautiful. Oh, my mind goes into a couple different directions, and it's how lucky the 100 or so people or property owners, I'm sure people have multiple properties with you, but those people that entrust you and your team to take care of their property, their home, how lucky of them. And you are a kick-ass property manager. And I think about the people that you're teaching to help create their own business in some way, shape, or form. And I think you've also spun off to do tangential businesses, if I'm not mistaken. So
Mhm.
yeah, tell me more about that.
So before I get into the other businesses, I'll mention, like, through the struggles of being a single mom and getting to this place, I remember still feeling like I'd kind of financially gotten on my feet, but I still felt so empty spiritually inside. And I thought, I'm missing something. Life still doesn't really feel fulfilled. I don't feel fulfilled spiritually. And I needed just a reset um, spiritually. I needed to go find and reconnect with the Lord again. So I signed up on a whim with my church to go to Belize. So I went to Belize for a mission trip, and then I signed up. I had not even left Belize and signed up to go to Africa. And while serving over there, realized this is my calling. This is my purpose. I felt so connected. Like this is what I was meant to do, was serve other people in this way. I don't know necessarily, obviously if I could be in Africa or be in Belize all the time serving, I would, but it doesn't have to be in another country. I could take that love for serving other people and bringing it into my business here, and that's what we've done. That's how I've really found my purpose in all of this, was to get out of my comfort zone, to go find, my faith and realign with the Lord again. And he showed me, what desperate faith looks like. And I feel like it's exactly what I needed to steer me in the right direction in this business, which is the hospitality business is our mission field. And that's what I tell my team all the time. This is where the Lord has chosen to put us for for however many years. And this is an honor for us to be here. So we have to serve these people, our clients, our homeowners, the very best way we know how to, with love, with kindness, and show up for them, 100% of the time, whatever that looks like. And so that's really been our mantra here is this this mission field that we've been given the honor of taking care of is is what we love to do every single day, and um, how we show the Lord that we're entirely grateful for the gift that He's given us. So yes, long story, but that's ultimately like what led me to this calling. As far as the other spinoff jobs, um, I started a interior design business shortly with one of my friends, who's so talented in this space. And as you know, short-term rentals have come so far, and you can't have a mediocre unit anymore. It has to be, stand out, and it has to have amazing furnishings and pops of color on the wall and focal walls. And so I teamed up with a friend of mine here who is incredibly talented. Her name is Kristen. We spoke about this on the mission trip to Africa. And I said, "Oh my gosh, I needed you. I need you. Come on the team." And so she has transformed so many of our spaces here, and she's so good at what she does. And so I have the pleasure of working with her. I've also started a laundromat. We have not offered those services to the public yet, but it is just for our clients and our homeowners at the moment. But who knows where it's going to go in the future? But it's there and it's running, and we have an incredible manager over there she loves to do laundry. It's Her name is Linda. We call her Linda the laundry lady. Um, she takes such good care of us, and so those are two spinoffs of the short term rental business that I originally started. But I have 3 or 4 different places that we're looking to build in the near future because of this business. Um, so yeah, the future is exciting, and I'm looking forward to what else is next.
Building an empire and open-minded to
Crazy.
expanding that empire. I love that there's a thread of fulfillment throughout those stories and who serves in what area and how they feel that they're in the spirit of service. It's not transactional. I'm trying to do this just to cover the bills, but tapping into that higher purpose within what we do. And I think that's so beautiful. My husband loves serving in short-term rentals management as well. And he said they have an obsession with the customer, the guest, an obsession with owner experience, and an obsession with the team experience. We want people to enjoy working with us. We want a healthy environment. We want to assume good intent with everyone that works with us. And for me, I recognized that I needed to step away from that because I wasn't feeling that same fulfillment. It was on the bookends of the day and challenging times where I still have a W-2 job and kids and wasn't doing self-care. So I couldn't come show up that way like they could for that. So I think that being aware that you are in the spirit of service and that can just recommit you to what you're doing in a more powerful way than you can ever do just mentally talking yourself into being motivated. And then also recognizing when you're not in that type of headspace, when it's time to walk away or pivot to a place where you are in the spirit of service, because that is not being in that space is so detrimental to you and the people that around you that are recipients of that energy that you give.
Right. I am so proud of you just because, since I met you, you've done a 360 and you've given yourself grace to know and be aware like, hey, this is not my passion. This is Dave's passion for short-term rental. And allowing yourself to step back and letting that be okay. You don't have to necessarily do what your spouse does. It doesn't have to be your dream. And I tell my girls all the time that I work with, like, hey, this is my dream for you. This is what I see you doing. It doesn't necessarily have to be your dream, but if you're going to be on my team, like, I want you to have goals and visions. But if for some reason this is not your dream, let me help you find your dream. So it takes a strong person to step away from that when like you don't feel that burning desire because it's hard. It's hard doing like really pouring yourself into something that you don't feel a love or a passion for. So
Mhm.
I totally get it. Um, it also doesn't in this space. I feel like if you're not in the giving world, if you're in the getting, like get, how much can we make? It's all about money. Then you're really missing out on the bigger picture. And for us, we hone in on it's about the getting or the giving, giving, and not how much can we get and gain because when your heart when your heart is aligned with service you're going to find success. So that's just something that we make sure that we maintain that focus. Make sure your heart is always aligned for service and the success will truly follow. So
And I can hear that in just how you manage your team and how you care about their progression. I think that's why you have such a successful team because they're either in the right lane and their goals and vision are in alignment, or they have your unwavering support for them to find their passion if it's elsewhere, because you can use your connections for that. So I
mhm.
love that. And I
Thank
think
you.
two things I want to say on what you just commented on. One was I love when guests have a good experience, but I take it so to heart when we have turbulence, and you have turbulence all the time. Guests have a bad experience. You have an issue that was no one's fault. You have maintenance to deal with. And I think just the same reason people used to say, oh, I could see you being a doctor or your bedside manner or your compassion. I was very brainiac kind of kid and student, but I said, I couldn't because I knew if I'd ever made a mistake, I'd never forgive myself. I would take the bad days and the tough moments or the slip ups, even if they're few and far between, so much to heart that it would totally hijack my career and make me not want to continue it anymore. So I think that I was talking to someone a couple weeks ago about how they love managing a unit on their own property, and they're very selective of who they allow there because they have kids on their property and it's on their primary property, and how much joy it brings them having guests. And I said that's amazing, and when you scale, that can fade a little bit when it's not just
Right,
one property, it's not your own personal property, and you just have volume and you see the full gamut of personalities and spectrum of emotionally stable and unstable people. So
right.
I said
Yeah,
that that's amazing. You still have that. I hope you keep that if you do decide to grow that business. But it was always hard for me. And I think when things got bigger, we got more properties, had more years under our belt. We had kids. We did our first Airbnb when I was still pregnant and we didn't have any kids yet. So then when we had kids, I really was in conflict with how I wanted to live my life. And the second thing I want to say on this topic is I think that when someone goes on to an entrepreneurial journey, like you probably said this too, if someone called you and said, "Hey, I want you to manage my property," you said yes. You had to then figure out processes, systems, operations, bookkeeping, legal, contracts, insurance, all that stuff. And so I think that I dove in on some of that stuff because it's important but non-urgent and could be done in odd hours of the day. But it wasn't because I was in the passenger seat with Dave the moment he said yes to the first contract for managing for someone else. And so when I pivot that around and say, oh, I saw him needing help because he was a smaller team and hadn't staffed up. We didn't have money to hire certain people for certain roles yet. If I were stressed at my job at Car Gurus and I needed help, would Dave start jumping in and doing work for me at Car Gurus? Would he start writing up interview notes from an interview I did for my direct report? Would he send email reminders to the staff that they have a deadline on Friday? No, he wouldn't. So it's so odd to me now when I think about that and flip it on its head to say, why did I roll up my sleeves and start doing bookkeeping and get a QuickBooks account and start learning how to do that and doing all the things to support Dave? And I think that can be this I want to say trap. I don't mean it to sound crude in any way,
Right.
but this entrepreneurial trap where you're in it together, you're come hell or high water with your spouse, and there's always one that's more of a go-getter jumping into a business endeavor without looking first, and the other person who's more cautious. And that was me, is always the more cautious. But I look back at the last couple of years and where we just didn't pause to ask questions.
Mm-mm.
We didn't ask, should I be doing this? Why am I doing this? Why are you doing this? And there can be great answers for that. But if you don't pause to ask questions, then you end up months and months and years later realizing you're unhappy and you can't identify why. And so that was one thing. And then the other was Dave chose to leave the W-2 world 3 years ago actually to become a real estate agent. And I realized some of that reason I dove in to help with bookkeeping and other things was fear. Oh, he's going to make some sales. We're going to be unclear of how much tax money we owe or something. And I don't want a surprise tax bill. So I'm going to dive in and be in the middle of it with our accountant and his income and everything so that we don't get blindsided. I should have just set a boundary and said, "Hey, I love you so much. I'm so supportive of you going to be an agent full time and have that be your full time income. My biggest fear is X, and I want us to just have a plan on how to address that fear so that we're both in agreement on how we avoid that. And if it does happen, how we handle that." And my life would have been so much different the last 3 years. I wouldn't trade the lessons for anything. But that's something I realize is that you start going through the motions really quickly and not asking questions and picking your head up. And then when you finally do, and it hits you like a ton of bricks because you didn't have those reflective moments along the way, you have this bing 180 reflection, hit a brick wall, and need to pause and let everything fall apart to rebuild it.
That's what I was about to say. Like, lucky for Dave, he had you, and you are so genius when it comes to that because, you see someone that you love and you just, you dove in to help. But also, what an amazing journey. And now that journey led you to your passion, which is coaching others and, speaking in the space. So, had you not done that and known what felt, you know, not awesome inside, not something that your heart really desired, you wouldn't be sitting here, in front of the podcast microphone speaking to me. So it goes to show like you take every little, step along your path for a reason, whether it's good or bad, or it felt terrible or it felt, comfortable and warm and fuzzy. Everything happens for a reason to get you to where you need to be. And so this is the space that you need to be. Like I've seen you evolve so much over the past year. And we used to joke at our little conferences, like, you're like this little fairy Tinkerbell, like you just glow, but you have so much insight and so much to offer people. And so it has been inspiring for me to see how far you've come in a year, and same with all of those folks that we were in those groups with. It just I, this was not me 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I didn't have this self belief. I didn't think that I could ever achieve, 7 figures in the short term rental business, or that I would be sitting here speaking to you on a podcast, or in 20 minutes going to film a documentary. Like, who do I think I am? And it's not that I'm beating my chest like I've done this great thing. It's just that I'm actually doing what I enjoy, and that's giving back to other people in this space. And that's exactly what you're doing too. It's a way to serve other people. And so I'm grateful that you had to dive into those muddy waters with old Dave to figure out what you didn't like, because you wouldn't have found what you've truly loved if you had not.
I think what's also so scary was I couldn't admit it to myself for a long
That's
time.
it. Yeah.
That was really hard, and when I did finally realize, because we were having conversations, "What do you like to do in the business?" when we were hiring more, and it's, "Where do we need to hire based on skill or preference?" I just was realizing I honestly, I'd feel so free if I had
Right.
nothing to do in the business, and that was scary to admit to myself, that was scary to verbalize to anyone and to Dave, and then to start making it in motion, and to say that he was perfectly happy at first when I said that is not the truth. Because it was
He
scary,
was
you feel like
scared.
someone's in the
Yes.
boat with you and the person
Right.
saying, "Peace out, I'm out of the boat," and then he was, a little bit shocked and scared, but then I think he found his own confidence and
Mhm.
stride, and the business he's been able to shape and steer in amazing ways that I could never have thought of or dreamed of, and so it was absolutely the right decision. I think I was meant to have that journey with him for a while, and then I was meant to separate from him and let him take it to the next level, and it's been beautiful to see that, and to see him still keeping that peace and that energy of being restored and not running around like a chicken with your head cut off. Because I think,
Mhm.
and not to say that's just Dave, but just anyone, when you first start out in a business, you try to do all the things. You're feel like if you're not grinding, you're not working hard enough, because you could slip up once and be over very quickly in the very beginning. And so he has found that balance to be able to still keep his peace, have his recovery time during the workday, because he gets to own his work day and he gets to coach others on it, but then also is so driven and motivated and committed to growing his management business. And that's what I love about that. So we definitely needed to go through those hard times and have those honest truths to yourself, and that might be the hardest truth to share that with, is yourself at first, and then start putting it into motion, and you owe it to yourself to say it, even if you're afraid of the reaction that's going to have. If
A
someone's going to be
million
scared
percent.
or hurt or upset or something, that's on them, but you can't avoid speaking your own truth. You have to speak your own truth, and they have to handle their emotions how they're going to handle their emotions.
I think it was you that said to me, this is not a dress rehearsal. Life is not a dress rehearsal. We get one shot. And I think so many women in general, people in general think, they have this idea of like what life is supposed to be. Or if you're in business with a spouse, like, well, you can't, you're stuck, like, how am I supposed to get out? This is our business, and so they don't necessarily sometimes follow their dreams because they're scared of disappointing the spouse, or this is what I should be doing and this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I just think we all have a space and a place and a purpose, a huge purpose to fulfill. And so we don't necessarily have to stay stuck in um, that, oh my gosh, this is what I must do, because if I don't, I'm going to disappoint so and so, or this is what the world thinks I should be doing, nurturing my husband's business and being alongside with him. It's not the case. We all have our room, all have room to grow. We all have a purpose to fulfill. And so the bravest thing you could have possibly done was to step out and then give Dave his space, and then you have your space. And look at you both. Like, both of you have just, I mean, exploded. It's just so cool to see, when it really does take shape. and it works the way it's supposed to do, and everything falls into place organically, without the grit and hustle and the grind. I mean, there's struggles along the way, as you know, but you're both happier now, and you feel like you're chasing after your dreams. So that's so freeing. And in my mind, that's success.
Mhm.
That's a form of success for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you're going to have those seasons of grit where you have to dig your heels in and work really hard and sometimes stay up late or get up early. But if you don't treat it like a season, which I think of as maybe less than a year in my book, but if
Mhm.
you have multiple years of burning midnight oil, grind, 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 then you need it. I recommend checking in with yourself because that's more of a lifestyle and a habit than a period to push to get to a certain level and then relax and breathe. And I think your homeostasis and your goal should be to have rest and recovery in your natural days and weeks. And I get that sometimes you have to have a season that you push and there is less balance in that period, but I think overall that's what at least Dave and I are striving to have is the norm is to have rest and recovery and peace every
Yes,
single day.
you have
And
to.
we let that season go on for too long, I
Mhm.
think.
It's, and now looking back to where, how hard I used to work and how hard I grinded, where I am now, and the time that I do give myself, to breathe and relax. But the Lord or the universe will shut you down so fast if you're not allowing yourself that moment of peace or those moments of peace throughout your day. I went to the doctor. I thought I had just a little rash. I ended up having the shingles. But the universe, when I say the universe will shut you down, they'll give you the shingles, and then you have no choice but to rest for 2 weeks because it is awful. So if you don't take care of yourself and your body and your mental health, your body will catch up with itself, and it will just peter out. And that's not a good thing. So it's the balance, the workflow balance, and the finding peace, spiritually and mentally, is incredibly important. I'm still struggling with it at times because I am a mom and a business owner, so it's hard for me to find that balance sometimes. But if you're not careful, the universe will find that balance for you really fast.
It's so true. I remember
Yeah,
even hearing about that during my bio class in college, and he said, if you don't rest and recover, a cold is going to knock you on your butt
mhm,
and make you
yeah,
do that. So you either build it in small doses along the time, or it comes all at once and it forces you to. And I would get a cold every single school break.
yeah,
Every single time I'd be down for the count for the entire break, and then I'd be back at it because of lack of sleep, stress, go, go, go from 6 a.m. to midnight every day. I was at the library till late hours in the night. I'd be up early going to the gym. And I'm being a lot better about that. Even last year when I'd see you for conferences in Nashville and Vegas, I would be run down and be sick. And you said, "Oh, you're sick again." And I hadn't put that together that by the time I ended up at those places, I was so run down. And it was a little bit of a vacation and getting to hang out with my friends. So my body, I think, treated it like, oh, you're on school vacation. Now we're going to make you rest and you're going to get a cold again.
exactly.
And so safe to say, I'm happy that this year I'm doing a lot better overall. And I think, like you said, that rest throughout the day, that mindfulness, deep breathing, and just paying attention even to my aura ring and when I'm in stress versus
Mhm.
restored. And that's been huge for me to notice that.
Something that you said a few weeks ago when we spoke on the phone, and I found myself doing it now. I was not stopping throughout the day to take deep breaths. I mean, ever. I was just go, go, go. I think I forgot to breathe, and I would find myself exhausted at the end of the day because I just wasn't like relaxing. I think I stayed in fight or flight like all the time and just go, go, go. And so since you told, I'm still trying, like, taking my breaths now as we speak. But getting in the gym every morning or every evening and just making that time for yourself, meditating in the mornings, or if you're reading scripture, but just that, along with drinking your water and eating healthy and breathing, just the simple slowing down to take in deep breaths just helps tremendously throughout your day.
The thing you said about fight or flight, I think that's a huge awareness that I've had is when I'm in fight or flight beyond normal. I think fight or flight is a natural fear
Mhm.
response to a threat, like you see a bear or something, and
Right,
you're supposed to have that reaction. It's biological and triggers you to action to help protect yourself so you survive. And I think that we our bodies are utilizing that response for everyday normal life turbulence, as I call it. And so I had to pay attention to myself, and I have two toddlers that I'm trying to help teach how to emotionally regulate, and with business stress and normal life stress, I didn't realize I was in fight or flight mildly a lot throughout the day, not even Aura Ring aside before I even had that. And so I think that's another great awareness to bring is, why am I in fight or flight? Why am I? I'm just driving to work. I'm just in meetings at work. I find that now I get to stress level when I'm excited. I'm talking to a friend and it skyrockets for the first time all day, or I'm excited about a project I'm presenting on. And so I'm trying to learn how to breathe and bring back that restored state even when I'm presenting something I'm excited about. But I think that back if I had the Aura Ring months and months or a year ago, I'd be very curious to see that data because I did feel in fight or flight and I didn't realize it. And I didn't ask myself, why am I in this? Why do I feel like I'm walking on eggshells? Why do I always feel like the shoe is going to drop? The other shoe is going to drop. And when I finally became aware of that fight or flight response and understanding I don't have a reason to be. I'm not in an unsafe environment. I'm safe. I'm cared for. I have all my needs and a lot of my wants, that it just really helped me unlock some things inside me and be
mhm.
more aware. And it came down to some very simple things like breathing and meditation, getting yoga in, getting exercise in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. It's just such a healthy part of my day. I'll even, if I really feel tight or something's bothering me, I just can't shake it. I can't really pinpoint where the stress or the anxiety's coming from. I will stop what I'm doing. I have, several meditations on my phone. I'll lay down on the floor in my office or lay down on the couch and just give myself that 10 minutes to reset. Because otherwise, if I don't, I find myself just, a little bitter, with people. Not in a bad way, but I feel bitter. I feel short with folks, or I know I'm not my best self. I'm not showing up as my best self. So it is so important. And isn't it cool to come to this realization? Like, we're older, we get it. Like, this is what's important, and this is what truly helps. So we don't stay stressed and balled up with all this anxiety, and it's not, it doesn't have to be this way, but you do have to be very aware of it.
And I've noticed that there's also tendencies in my body that I do. I will tense up my shoulders a little bit. And when I notice that, I relax them back down because I can tell that's me telling me I'm stressed. But then also, I think your body is reinforcing that you're stressed. And so when you help physically make your body stop that stress response, it also can help you the reverse way to mentally help you ease because of that. And I found this photo of me on a horse, it was a not I wasn't horseback riding by any means. It was a ride at some sort of little fair carnival. And I just saw my shoulders tensed up while I'm on the horse and I'm a little kid. And when I saw that, and I've seen me in other photos as a kid, just normal photos where my shoulders are tensed up, I was a bit shy and more reserved and very quiet and soft spoken back then. And I said, wow, I could just tell that was the stress and tense and discomfort in my shoulders, and I see it throughout my childhood in photos. So it was interesting for me to observe it decades later and say, wow, I didn't realize that. And I feel for that kid feeling that way. And now I catch myself every day where I can just sense my shoulders are up a tiny bit, probably not even noticeable to anyone else, but I'll catch myself and bring them back down to help reinforce that calm composure.
Yeah. As you're saying that, I can remember, like, just during this last hour, like, feeling myself, like, you just feel it and you're like, "Hey, chill out. Like, what is there to be anxious about? I'm talking to my friend, but you just get so worked up, and It's just
Exactly.
so easy, so you just go with the flow, like take a deep breath, reset, and start over. No
Yes.
reason to be anxious about anything.
No, no, you don't. And this is going to be a horrible segue into animals and how we relax. I think of what we've heard from our mentors that being in nature, why we feel very at ease there is because of that. Nature has no conflict. It just is. It all blends beautifully together. And I'll even notice that when I had a break between meetings, I went outside and just stood on my porch and took some deep breaths and saw a turkey walking by, and I think about you and how you have your little hobby farm there. And we were talking before we were on camera about how amazing it is, but also challenging it can be with seeing the circle of life right before your eyes with these animals having just shorter lifespans than us and odd things and illnesses happening to them. So tell us more about your hobby farm. We heard you mention it about it being your first Airbnb and it was in your bio, but yeah, tell us more about it.
The redneck ranch is what we refer to it as. It's like a redneck petting zoo. So I grew up in the country. I grew up with cats and dogs, goldfish, hamsters. I never had the opportunity to own goats and horses, but I was so drawn to animals because of their peace and the peace that it brought within me, I think. And so I always knew that, I had this great love for animals. Well, when, we bought the farm or the house with the acreage, after the divorce, I would go to Arkansas. My friend had a farm. Lucy, like I mentioned, was 4, and she would sit in the chicken coop for hours. And at first I thought, wow, this is like great entertainment for her, So we have enough room on the farm. We're going to do this. And so my brother, my dad, and myself built our first little chicken coop. We got 5 chickens, 5 guineas in about a year. No, I'm sorry, a month. After a month, all of those birds had survived. And I thought, oh my gosh, I am a professional farmer. I can do anything, So I was like, bring on all the big animals. And we got 2 goats. And then we added a boyfriend for those 2 lovely ladies. And the rest is history. Now we have, oh gosh, goats, sheep, pigs, ducks, cats, you name it. It's kind of like we're the goodwill for animals. People know, like, oh, if we don't want it, just take it to Ashley's house. They'll take it. And so it's just been a gift. And I come home regularly. This is what I do, just go out and let all the big animals out, take my shoes off, and just watch them play. It's true therapy because they're such morons, that you can't help but laugh at what they do, and it just brings us so much joy. And throughout, the journey of owning the hobby farm, we have dealt with death, and it is not fun at all, but it also have and it's taught my daughter and myself so many valuable lessons, about just the circle of life, and we can what a gift it is to have these creatures in our lives for even a short amount of time, but just loving on them and enjoying the memories that they bring, and all the time that we have with them is always just a gift. But to be able to share that with her, and she's 15 now, so she doesn't have a lot of time to help me with the animals. So, um, but to see her be responsible, and I just have these memories of her down by the chicken coop with the goats, and she would lay with one of our goats whose name was Olive, and they were like besties. It was like having a grown dog. Um, just the memories that we shared together of these animals and having this farm and all the stories that I could tell you about the animals. I don't I would not have traded it for the world. It's part of who I am now. It's what brings me peace when I go home. It's what I look forward to at the end of the day. I don't make a dime of money off these critters, like they eat me out of house and home, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. They are my life, and it's part of. I found my happiness. Where in your heart it just feels warm and fuzzy, like this is right, and it's that simple way of living. out in the country, and this is, finding my happy place at the end of the day.
That's so beautiful. And I remember asking you, how many animals do you have? And you said, I don't even know. I can't count because, again, there's that circle of life happening right before your eyes that, unless you go and walk around counting every single animal during a period of time, you just don't know. And
Yeah.
you have 3 acres, right?
Hmm. 3 acres, but we had 14 baby goats a month ago, and within a matter of 1 week. So we went from having maybe 15 goats to doubling that. And you're right, it just always changes. And so does my food account, or the money that I spend on feeding these critters. So, um, but like I said, it's worth it. It has been, there's moments, like I told you, that have been really hard. But the lessons that we've gained out of owning the farm and having to be responsible, and the connections that I've made with community members who also own animals. But another beautiful thing is the people that come out to the farm to stay on the Airbnbs, stay in both the Airbnbs. I take for granted having lived around these animals. And there's people that come to the farm, and children who have never held a chicken, who've never held a goat, and to be able to give them that gift and that experience, and to see their eyes light up. You talk about making you want to cry. Like, that is worth it 1,000 times over, just to have those little moments. And we've had, schools come out with children with special needs, and it gets me every time, because there's nonverbal kids who I put a chicken in their lap, and they start, making noises, and you can see with their body motions that they're just so happy. And if I could do that every day, I would. It just brings me so much joy. But the farm has, it's been a game changer for us.
So cool. It's a very fulfilling hobby. I'd say it's a hobby, but because it's not, you said a stream of income, it's just a passion project of yours and just another way to give both the Airbnb, the field trips, the rehoming of animals too. I know there was a farm up the street when I was growing up, and they'd always have one single horse that was a retired police horse. And then, yes, and they also would have a whole fleet of baby goats every spring. And I loved going to see them. And there's always a theme to the baby goats' names. So if their mom was the candy bar name, then all of those goats would have a
Hmm.
candy bar name. And then the other
Exactly.
goats would have another theme. And it
Yeah.
was so, so fun. I loved visiting, especially in the spring, and the baby lambs. And I remember one of them was named Freckles. I just remember
Oh,
that.
that's
Yeah, it's a great time of
cute.
year right now, April, where you get to have the spring babies now. Oh, bringing me back down memory lane. I love that.
It is. It's really fun, especially if they have it when the weather is nice and warm, and not when it's 0 degrees outside.
No, we had snow on the ground this morning, which was
Oh
quite
my
interesting.
gosh.
My daughter asked if it's Christmas instead of Easter because because of the snow. So we're just totally thrown for a loop right now.
Hey, well, come visit the farm. I mean, we have 75-degree weather here right now. It is beautiful, and everything is green and lush, and babies galore.
Well, maybe I'll take you
If
up
you
on that.
ever
My
come
daughter
any
loves
closer,
animals.
I
She's like
know
me when I was a kid, and we were just in Florida, and now we're in 30 degrees and rain and cold and snow dusting. So that sounds much more appealing.
well, you're welcome anytime.
We'll do it. We'll make it happen at some
Okay,
point.
that would be
But
great.
I want to be respectful of your time because I know you have to go film a documentary, I believe. Just,
Yes, not
lightly
at
drop
all.
that in there. So I do want to touch on your tennis career really quick. So you taught tennis, especially to kids. Do you want to teach my kids? Because I do not want to coach soccer or anything. I don't have the patience, I say, for that. So for you to love and have such joy for teaching kids tennis, that's amazing. But yeah, walk us through really quickly how you got into tennis and what you were doing there before you started coaching kids.
So, my dad was actually a tennis coach. And I think just to get me out of the house, out of my mom's way, when he got home from work every day, he would take me across the street from where we were living and just put me on the courts and feed me balls. I think I was probably 2. He grew up, I mean, he passed away not too long ago, but had an amazing career teaching. He's the second winningest coach at Alcorn State University. Um, and I remember growing up and he was just like the most fun with little kids on the courts. Not that I ever thought that I would follow in his footsteps. It's not where I thought my life was going. But when I did have to pivot, the the opportunity arose and I was asked to teach. I was in medical sales after college, and then this opportunity came to be. And they said, nobody will teach the kids. Nobody wants to teach the kids. Well, I had just happened to. I finished college at Mississippi State University. I played tennis there. I also played my freshman year at a JUCO college. Ended up finishing pretty high, I think like 13th in the nation. And so then went on and played at Mississippi State. And because I had that background, um, this door opened, and I taught with joy and exhaustion for 13 years, 3 to 8 year olds. um, they were my pride and joy. But also, again, I see why the Lord put me on, in those kids' lives. Like when I went through the divorce, it was a really lonely place. And you have these kids that are in your face and they give you genuine love, and the things that come out of their mouth, would just put you on the floor in hysterics. So I'm super grateful for those 13 years and for all the people that I met along the way and the connections that I gained from teaching in this community. It's a small community. So I got to know a lot of the parents, and I earned their trust through teaching their children, and so it's easy to get referrals from people that know you from teaching, from me coaching their kids. It just was 13 years of, like I said, pure exhaustion because you're herding cats, 50 kids, but at the same time, oh my gosh, so I miss my babies, so much fun. But I couldn't do that forever. My body was worn out. I was exhausted. I would get in the car after, because you have to be on. You couldn't just go out there with a halfway attitude. It was just like you have to be a cheerleader and like, wow. And so I would get in the car after teaching and just sit there like, not say anything to anybody for 30 minutes, not leave the parking lot, and just feeling so depleted and not having enough energy for Lucy when I got home. And so that's when I knew there needed to be a shift. Not, my body was exhausted, my brain was exhausted, but organically it happened. It just, see, the Lord made it happen and opened those doors. So appreciative. So that's where the tennis story ended for me.
That exhaustion reminds me of me after bedtime every night. So I can imagine having that as my job and then going home to my kid and then needing to rejuvenate that energy
Right.
to be there for them, one of the most that you want to have the best energy for your own kids. So I totally get that.
Yeah, it was so fun. But yeah, oh gosh, bedtime. Yes, I remember those days. Just wait.
Yeah.
They'll be teenagers before you know it, and then you won't be able to wake them up or make them go to sleep. So I know this is a hard season, but it really just doesn't last very long. But my gosh, it is. It's exhausting when you're in it.
Yeah, it really is. I know. And people tell me the days are long, but the years are short. And I truly do feel that. Our son is turning 6, and I can't believe that he's starting kindergarten. He's a summer baby, so he's starting
Yeah,
later than usual. But the fact that I was pregnant with him, that long ago just feels like it was yesterday. And it also feels like a lifetime ago, too. So
yeah,
it does
I
go by
know.
quickly.
It sure does.
All right. Well, I want to wrap this up so I can let you be on your way, Miss Megastar here. So, where can people find you?
So you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Velvet Ditch Villas. That's our short-term rental company. And then also, I am trying to boost our personal brand, my personal brand, which is at Ashley Freeman Official.
So, I'm going to call you out on your language there. I keep getting called out for saying the word try. I am boosting,
That's right.
I
I
am
am.
promoting
I
my
am.
personal brand that
Thank
you can
you.
find here.
Thank you. I'm going to say it just like that from now on.
That's something, even I was on a coaching call yesterday, and the weaker language and the stronger language came out from everyone. And it was so cool to hear people call you out on it right away over and over and over again.
Well, I appreciate that because I do
Mhm.
need to start speaking it into fruition too.
Oh, you and me both.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so, so much, Ashley. I really appreciate it. I miss you. I
I
hope to see
miss
you
you
again soon.
too.
I know we were
Thank
on a
you.
trajectory seeing each other every 2 months last
I
year, and it's
know.
not quite the same this year, but
No,
this
but
was such a pleasure.
we need a big reunion soon.
Yes. And
Okay,
somewhere warm, not up in Boston right now in
that's
April.
right. Yes. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you. Have a great one, Ashley.
You
And
too.
thank you all for tuning in to this week's episode of the Balancing Ambitions podcast. Have a beautiful
Bye.
day. As always, if you enjoyed this show, please leave a review, because when you leave a review or share an episode, you make it easier for someone else to find us and benefit from these stories and tips we share. There is a link to everything we talked about in the show notes. Thank you all for listening to the Balancing Ambitions podcast, and have a beautiful day.